Kara and I met a little over 4 years ago at a birthday party for a mutual friend. It was one of those laid-back, backyard gatherings with fairy lights strung through the trees, a playlist that kept jumping tracks, and someone handing out plastic cups of cheap sangria. I remember she showed up wearing this oversized denim jacket covered in little pins and patches, and she immediately started making jokes about the sad state of the guacamole. She had this way of speaking fast, confident, and totally unfiltered. Within 5 minutes of meeting her, I was hooked. We started talking, and it just didn't stop. What was supposed to be a quick hello turned into us standing off to the side for over an hour, deep in a conversation about old movies, weird snacks, and our shared hatred for small talk. By the end of the night, I had her number, and by the end of that week, we'd had our first date, a late-night diner run that turned into watching the sunrise from the hood of my car. From the beginning, we clicked. She was spontaneous, sarcastic, and full of energy. I'm a bit more reserved, more plans and playlists than go with the flow, but somehow, our personalities balanced each other. Where I brought structure, she brought spark. We were different in a way that worked. A year after we started dating, we moved in together. We got a 2-bedroom apartment just outside the city. Nothing fancy, but it had big windows and a quirky charm that made it feel like home. Kara took over decorating. It quickly became this colorful, creative space full of plants, art prints, and furniture she found online and convinced me to help carry up 3 flights of stairs. I handled most of the bills, she handled the style. We fell into a rhythm. We both worked from home part of the week, me in software design, her in content creation and social media work, so we had a lot of time together. Mornings were our favorite. We'd sit on the balcony with coffee, watching the city wake up, trading stories and ideas. She always had something in the works, some collaboration or campaign she was putting together, and I loved hearing her talk about it. She lit up when she talked about her work. It wasn't just a job for her, it was a passion. Evenings were usually quiet. We cooked together, or ordered in when we were too tired, and settled in with a show or a board game. Weekends, we'd explore new coffee shops, flea markets, or just drive aimlessly listening to music. She loved the unexpected. I loved how alive she made the ordinary feel. Eventually, I proposed. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a quiet night at home, candles, her favorite takeout, and a ring I'd spent months saving for. She said yes through tears and laughter, and I don't think I've ever seen her look happier. We started planning the wedding soon after venue tours, color swatches, picking out songs. She took the lead on most of it, and I was happy to follow. Looking back, those years were some of the best of my life. Or at least, that's what I thought. Kara and I found our rhythm fast after moving in together. I've heard people say that cohabiting can either make or break a couple, but for us, it honestly just made everything stronger. We had our quirks, sure. She left lights on in every room like it was a survival tactic, and I organized the fridge like it was a library, but none of it mattered. It was easy to laugh about the little stuff because the big things were always aligned. Our days had a kind of comfortable pattern. I'd usually start working earlier. My job in UX design had me on East Coast calls most mornings, while Kara eased into her day. She liked to sleep in a bit, then settle into her little corner of the living room where she had a standing desk, ring light, notebooks, and all the tools of her trade. She worked in digital content, some brand work, some freelance, some personal projects, and always had something going on. I used to joke that she had more side hustles than I had socks. But she was good at it. Her creativity was endless. Whether it was editing videos, managing a small online community she ran, or partnering with brands, she always seemed to be juggling 5 things and somehow making it look easy. She wasn't the kind of person to sit still, and I admired that. She made things happen. Even when we were both buried in our work, we found ways to stay connected. A quick touch on the shoulder during lunch. A shared playlist playing from the Bluetooth speaker. Notes stuck to the coffee machine. Just little things like, "You got this today?" or "Lunch break walk later?" They weren't grand gestures, but they reminded me we were thinking about each other even in the middle of a busy day. Weekends were when we really reset. Friday nights were usually low-key, takeout, and whatever new series we were both into. Saturdays we'd run errands together, grab brunch, maybe hit a bookstore or record shop. Kara always had some event she wanted to check out, pop-ups, galleries, new restaurants that just opened. She had this radar for anything slightly off the beaten path, and I always went along because watching her light up was half the fun. Sundays were slower. Pancakes. Music playing in the kitchen. Sometimes we'd just sit on the couch and read side by side for hours. It didn't matter what we were doing, it just mattered that we were together. Our families got along well too. Her mom was a firecracker, just like Kara, funny, fast-talking, sharp. My parents adored her. She had this way of stepping into any room and making people feel like she'd known them for years. My younger sister once told me she hoped to find someone as cool and full of life as Kara. At the time, I remember feeling proud, like I had really done something right. We were 6 months out from the wedding when things started ramping up. We'd secured the venue, locked in the date, and started mailing out save-the-dates. Kara handled most of the details. She loved the planning part, and I was happy to stay in my lane and be the calm in the chaos. I focused on practical stuff, managing our budget, coordinating with vendors, making sure we didn't forget boring things like napkin orders and insurance. I felt lucky, honestly. I'd found someone who kept life interesting, kept me on my toes, and still made time to curl up next to me when the day was over. Back then, if you had asked me if I had any doubts, I would have said no without blinking. Not even close. As we got closer to the wedding, life felt like it was happening on fast forward, but in the best way. Everything was buzzing with movement. Kara thrived on it. She loved being in the middle of a dozen things at once. One minute she'd be on the phone with a florist, the next she'd be scrolling through playlists to finalize our first dance song. Meanwhile, I was making spreadsheets, guest lists, transportation timelines, vendor payments. We were a team, in our own odd way. Our apartment looked like a planning war zone. Fabric swatches, samples of invitation paper, 3 different kinds of candles lined up on the kitchen counter like we were testing their scent throw. Kara had this big binder she called the Wedding Bible. It was full of magazine cutouts, sticky notes, checklists, and ideas she'd collected over the past year. She carried it everywhere like it was a living part of her. And honestly, watching her light up over table settings and chair options made me love her more. I didn't care about most of the details. I'm a pretty simple guy. But I loved seeing her excited. That alone made the whole thing feel worth it. Outside of wedding planning, our life stayed pretty consistent. Kara was still working a mix of freelance content gigs and her personal projects, and she kept getting new collaborations through social media. It always impressed me, the way she built her own audience, one video or post at a time. I didn't follow that world too closely, it wasn't my thing, but I respected how much time and energy she poured into it. She was always brainstorming, editing, posting. It looked like work, real work, and she treated it like a full-time job. I still kept to my regular routine. Early mornings, design calls, client check-ins, meal prep. We overlapped in the middle of the day for lunch, and again at night when we'd wind down together. Sometimes she'd be so caught up in her edits that I'd bring her a sandwich without her asking. Other times she'd crawl into my lap while I was working and ask me to help her pick a thumbnail or proofread a caption. I liked being part of her world, even if just in small ways. People asked us all the time if we were nervous. I wasn't. Not even a little. I felt solid in us. We'd made it through tough conversations, different working styles, long stretches of chaos and calm. I felt like I knew her, not just who she was around me, but who she was in the world. Confident, driven, unapologetically herself. She could be stubborn, sure, opinionated, but I liked that. I liked being with someone who didn't water themselves down. We had the final dress fitting marked on the calendar, my tux ready at the shop, and our family traveling in from all corners of the country. We were 3 weeks out, and everything was on schedule. Friends were texting every day about plans, music requests, honeymoon suggestions. Kara's bachelorette trip had already happened. Just a weekend in the city with her best friend, some spa stuff, and a rooftop bar. Mine was coming up, a cabin weekend with 3 of my closest friends. Chill and quiet, just the way I like it. If I had taken a picture of my life right then, I would have framed it. I felt lucky, stable, loved. I didn't know how fast that picture was about to shatter. Things were still on track. We were just under 3 weeks out from the wedding, and everything was coming together like clockwork. Kara was buzzing with energy, juggling a dozen things at once, and I'd never seen her more in her element. Vendor confirmations, final fittings, seating charts, her brain was always going, and I tried to keep up as best I could. That weekend, one of her closest friends, Jamie, came over to help finalize a few last details for the bachelorette brunch Kara was planning for the following weekend. The two of them had known each other since college, and when they got together, it was like watching a sitcom on fast forward, inside jokes, rapid-fire conversations, and constant laughter. I stayed out of their way mostly. I was in the office editing a project, occasionally hearing bursts of laughter or clinking glasses from the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I swear I wasn't. But there was this one moment where I stepped out to grab a drink of water, and their conversation caught my attention, not in a suspicious way, just curiosity. I heard Jamie say, by the way, those videos you've been making lately? Absolutely insane. I mean, I had no idea you were that comfortable in front of the camera. Kara laughed, big and unbothered. I told you it's a whole different kind of confidence, she said. And hey, it pays better than brand work right now. They both laughed again, and Jamie added something like, well, you're killing it. Honestly, I don't know how you pull it off. I'd be terrified someone would recognize me. That was the line that stuck with me, not in an alarming way, but more in a what does that mean kind of way. Still, I didn't ask. I didn't say anything. I grabbed my glass of water, smiled when they noticed me, and went back to my office. Kara didn't seem off. If anything, she was glowing. She'd always been confident, but lately she seemed more alive. Her energy was intense in a good way, or so I thought. She had that post-workout, post-win kind of spark. I chalked it up to wedding excitement, the high of seeing everything come together. And besides, she'd always been working on different projects, podcast appearances, video campaigns, mini courses, whatever this new thing was. I figured it was just another side hustle. That night, we ordered pizza and watched reruns of a show we'd seen 100 times. She curled up next to me like nothing had changed. And maybe it hadn't. Maybe it was just one of those odd, out-of-context things people say. I didn't want to be the guy asking weird follow-ups. She'd always been private about her creative work, not secretive, just protective. And I respected that. Still, for a split second, that line Jamie said circled back in my head. I'd be terrified someone would recognize me. But then Kara reached for my hand, leaned her head on my shoulder, and all of it slipped away. After that night with Kara and Jamie, things settled back into routine. But something about that moment, about that offhand comment Jamie made, kept turning over in my mind. Not in a paranoid way, just curious. It lingered. Kara had always worked on a wide range of digital content. Over the past few years, she'd done everything from social media consulting to affiliate work to short-form video campaigns. She never gave me the full rundown of every project, and I never asked for it. That was just how we worked. I trusted her, and she appreciated the freedom to build her own thing. It had always felt balanced. But over the next few days, I started noticing things I hadn't before. Little things. For one, she was spending more time behind closed doors in her office. I'd hear her talking to the camera, sometimes laughing in a tone I didn't quite recognize, not fake, just unfamiliar. I knocked once to ask if she wanted coffee, and she didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was louder than normal, like she needed to cover something up. Yeah, just a sec. I'll be out in a bit. Again, I didn't think anything specific at first. Maybe she was recording content. Maybe she was just caught mid-take and didn't want to lose her rhythm. But I started realizing how often that door was closed lately, and how much I'd stopped being invited into her creative world. It wasn't like before, back when she used to ask me to proofread captions or help choose thumbnail photos. Now, it felt like I was watching her from the outside, like I was a guest in her space, not a partner. She also started getting more packages. At first it was clothes, nothing strange, just more frequent than usual. Then gear. Light stands, tripods, storage drives. I even saw a box with discreet item printed near the shipping label, and when I asked her about it casually, she just laughed and said, "Oh, it's for a sponsored project I'm doing. Don't worry about it." I shrugged. I did trust her. I wanted to keep trusting her. One night, I came home a little earlier than planned after grabbing dinner with a friend. Kara was in her office, door cracked open just an inch, and the room glowed with soft-colored lighting, like she'd set up an entire scene. I could hear her talking, but the tone was different from her usual marketing voice. Softer, flirtier. Still not inappropriate exactly, just enough to make me pause. I didn't linger. I grabbed a drink from the kitchen, acted like I hadn't noticed, and sat on the couch scrolling through my phone. A few minutes later, she came out all smiles and kissed me on the cheek like it was any other day. There was no fight, no accusation, nothing to call out, really. But something had shifted. She felt less present. Her eyes didn't linger on mine like they used to. Her laugh felt half a beat too quick, like it was covering for something. It was like she was living in a parallel version of our life, one I didn't have access to. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to assume the worst just because the details didn't make sense to me. But deep down, I started wondering, what exactly was she filming? By the time we hit the 2-week mark before the wedding, I started waking up with this tight feeling in my chest. Nothing dramatic, nothing I could explain, it was just a heaviness. Like something had gone missing in our relationship, and I hadn't realized it was gone until I couldn't find it anymore. Kara was still smiling, still affectionate in all the expected ways. She kissed me goodbye. She laughed at my dumb jokes. She shared links for honeymoon destinations and showed me Pinterest boards full of color schemes and floral ideas. But there was something behind her eyes that didn't match. It was like watching a performance from someone you know too well to be fooled by. We were busy, sure. Weddings take over your life. But it wasn't just stress. I could feel her pulling away from me, not in grand gestures, but in the absences. She stopped reaching for my hand when we walked down the street. She stayed up later than usual, often long after I'd gone to bed. Her phone was never more than a few inches away. I'd wake up at 1 or 2 a.m. and find the glow of her screen still visible under the crack of the office door. I told myself not to overthink it. She'd always been independent. She needed her space to work, and her projects were demanding more of her lately. That was fair. But the more I told myself that, the more it felt like I was covering for her. Like I was making excuses for something I couldn't name. Then there was the night she said she had to film for a late-night campaign activation. She mentioned it offhand while brushing her teeth. I asked what the project was, just curiosity, and she gave me this vague explanation about a client launching a new product line. It's kind of a lifestyle-adjacent thing, she said. Really visual, kinda edgy. I nodded, trying to follow. You'll probably think it's dumb. I doubt that, I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, I stayed on the couch watching a movie while she disappeared into her office. Every now and then I heard faint sounds, music, the soft thump of footsteps, a muffled laugh. Around midnight, she came out wearing a long sweater and nothing underneath, cheeks flushed like she'd been running. She kissed me on the forehead and said she was wiped. I asked if everything went well. She said it did, crushed it, in her words, and disappeared into the bedroom without another word. And I sat there for a long time, the TV still playing in the background, wondering why something so ordinary suddenly felt so far away. It wasn't one moment. It wasn't one mistake. It was 100 tiny shifts that added up to one big question I couldn't bring myself to ask. What had she gotten herself into? And why did it feel like I didn't know the woman I was about to marry? There's a specific kind of silence that fills a room when two people who used to be close no longer feel entirely real to each other. It's not a fight. It's not tension in the traditional sense. It's just absence. Presence without connection. That's what the apartment had started to feel like. The wedding was 10 days away. Most of the logistics were in place: venue walkthrough, final guest confirmations, playlist approvals, flower order locked down. Kara was still on top of everything, at least from the outside. She talked fast, kept her phone glued to her hand, and bounced between calls like she was producing a major film. But somewhere between the cake tasting and the guest seating chart, she stopped sharing things with me. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't malicious. But she'd started closing doors when she worked. Literally and figuratively. She used to show me drafts of her content, ask for input, want me to hear the ideas she was excited about. No? It was all happening behind screens, behind passwords, behind vague explanations. She told me she was trying something new. A shift in tone. More adult-oriented, bold, and experimental was how she described it. It's not your thing, she said, waving it off with a laugh when I asked for more details. Just trust me, it's good. I did trust her. Or I wanted to. But I couldn't ignore the small signs anymore. The late-night filming sessions that always ended with her slipping past me into bed like she'd been somewhere else entirely. The new clothes that didn't show up in the laundry. The perfume I'd never smelled on her before. And the camera equipment, boxes piled up in the hall closet, higher-end lighting, backdrops, sound gear. It felt like more than a freelance gig. It felt like another life unfolding in parallel with mine, one she didn't invite me into. I tried to joke about it once. We were sitting on the couch, both half watching a show while she scrolled through her phone. I said, "You've got more gear in that office than some production studios." She looked up, blinked like she'd forgotten I was even there, then smiled and said, "What can I say? Gotta keep the content machine running." Then she leaned over, kissed my cheek, and went right back to her phone. I didn't push. I didn't want to seem suspicious or insecure. That wasn't who I was. But the part of me that had always felt connected to her, the part that could read her mood from across the room, was slowly going quiet. Like a dimmer switch being turned down, click by click. That weekend, she told me she needed a few hours alone to finish a deadline, and asked if I could give her the apartment. Just easier to record when there's no background noise, she said. Of course, I told her. I grabbed my keys, went out for a long drive, wandered through a bookstore, got lunch by myself. I didn't mind giving her space, but I did mind feeling like a guest in my own life. When I came back, everything was tidy, too tidy. The lights were off. The gear was packed away. The air smelled faintly like something sweet and unfamiliar. She was in the shower. I never said a word. But that night, lying next to her, I stared at the ceiling and thought, something is happening. I just don't know what. And I had no idea that in less than a week, I'd have my answer, whether I was ready or not. The morning of the wedding was calm, almost unnaturally so. I woke up to soft light filtering through the curtains and the kind of silence that feels too still, like the world knows something you don't. Kara had spent the night at a hotel with her bridesmaids, which we'd agreed on weeks before. You know, tradition, she said with a wink, brushing a kiss on my cheek the night before. She looked so happy. Or maybe I just wanted to believe that. I made coffee. I sat on the couch. My suit was hanging on the bedroom door. My shoes were polished, tie prepped, everything ready to go. We were supposed to be married in 3 hours. My best friend, Jordan, was supposed to meet me around noon to help get ready. We hadn't spoken since his flight landed the night before. He was coming in from Seattle, hadn't seen Kara or me in person in over a year. Around 9:47 a.m., my phone rang. It was Jordan. I expected something casual, maybe a joke, a timeline question. Bro, you nervous yet? But the tone in his voice stopped me cold before he even finished the first sentence. Hey, he said, voice tight, careful. I need to talk to you about something. It's about Kara. I didn't say anything right away. Just stood in the living room, phone pressed to my ear, heart rate climbing fast. There's no easy way to say this, he went on. But I saw something this morning. Someone I know sent me a link, thinking it was funny. It wasn't. It was Kara. My stomach dropped. I didn't even breathe. She was in a video, he said. Online. It's not a joke, man. It's not content like the stuff she used to make. She's with someone. On camera. Explicit. There are other videos. And they're being sold. Like, professionally. It's her. He stopped talking. So did I. I stared at the floor for a long second. Everything in the apartment, our apartment, suddenly felt foreign. Like I didn't belong there. Like none of it had been mine to begin with. Jordan's voice came through again, quieter. I'm sorry. I didn't know if I should call, but you're getting married in 3 hours. You need to know. I thought you should hear it from me. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. Then I said the only thing I could manage. I understand. And I hung up. I stood in the center of our living room for what felt like hours after that call. The walls, the rug, the framed engagement photo on the bookshelf, it all looked the same, but nothing felt familiar anymore. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't yelling. I was just still. Empty. But underneath that stillness was something boiling up, slow, thick, and undeniable. Not confusion. Not sadness. Rage. I hadn't even seen the video. I didn't need to. Jordan wouldn't lie to me. And the way he said it, the weight in his voice, I knew. My body knew before my brain caught up. It was as if every moment of the last few weeks suddenly clicked into place. The closed doors. The strange filming hours. The sudden distance. The secrecy masked as content. She wasn't just cheating. She was broadcasting it. Monetizing it. Turning the betrayal into a side hustle. And I was supposed to marry her. I don't know how long I sat before I picked up my phone again. I didn't call Kara. I didn't scream or demand an explanation. I texted my family first. Then hers. Group texts, no emotion, just the facts. The wedding is off. There has been a serious betrayal. Please do not reach out to Kara on my behalf. I'm okay, but I won't be attending. Thank you for understanding. The replies started pouring in almost immediately. Confused texts. Shocked ones. My mom asked if I was joking. My sister called me twice. I ignored all of it. I didn't want to explain. Not now. Maybe not ever. I wasn't going to tell them that the woman they'd welcomed into their lives, the woman who smiled through brunches and laughed with them over wine, had been sleeping with strangers on camera for money and never once told me. I wasn't going to drag myself through the shame of justifying what I was walking away from. The next part, I didn't plan. I just moved. I got in the car and drove straight to the hotel where Kara was staying with her bridesmaids. I didn't care that it was her getting ready morning. I didn't care if her hair was half done or if the makeup artist was in the room. I didn't care who saw. When she opened the door, she was still wearing a robe and had her hair curled on one side. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, like it was some sweet surprise. "Babe," she said, her voice high and casual. "What are you doing here?" I stepped into the room without asking. One of her bridesmaids said something behind her, but I didn't hear it. "I know everything," I said. My voice didn't shake. "The videos, the lies, the money, all of it." The look on her face, that look, I'll never forget it. Not fear, not shame, just calculation. She was trying to figure out how much I knew, how much she could still twist into something else. "Kai," she started, her hands up. "Wait, can we talk about this in private?" "You don't understand. It's not a." "It is," I cut in. "It's exactly what it looks like. Don't insult both of us by pretending it's not." She moved toward me, her voice shifting into that pleading tone I'd only ever heard when she didn't get her way. "Please, let me explain. You don't understand what this is. It's not just." "You're done," I said. "You're not coming home. Your things will be sent to your mom's. Don't call me. Don't text. You've made your choices." For a moment, it looked like she was going to cry. But even then, I couldn't tell if it was real or just another act. The tears didn't come. Only the silence did. I turned and walked out of that hotel room, out past the other stunned bridesmaids, out into the street where my car sat humming like nothing had changed. I got in, drove home, and started deleting her from my life like erasing a corrupted file. She called 16 times. She texted. She left voicemails ranging from apologetic to furious. I didn't listen to a single one. I changed the locks that evening, canceled every joint account, blocked her on every platform. It didn't bring closure, but it brought distance. And right then, that was all I needed. The first few days after I walked away didn't feel like freedom. They felt like shock. My body was moving, eating, answering emails, driving to the store, but I wasn't really there. It was like my brain had unplugged to protect me from what it couldn't process. The silence in the apartment was thick, heavier than when Kara used to be gone for long shoots. This silence wasn't empty, it was loud with everything that had been lost. But slowly, it changed. I started getting up earlier, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to move, to shift energy. I boxed up her remaining things, anything she hadn't already taken or I didn't want to see again. Her mugs, her shoes, that denim jacket she wore on our first date. I set the box by the door, called her mom, and told her someone should come get it by the end of the week. It was picked up 2 days later. No note, no call, just gone. And honestly, I was relieved. I changed the apartment layout next. Moved the furniture, tossed the pillows she picked out, bought a new blanket, new dishes, new lighting. It wasn't about pretending she never lived there. It was about creating a space where she didn't linger anymore. Her presence had clung to everything, and little by little, I was cutting that thread. My friends showed up in quiet ways. Jordan stayed an extra few days after the wedding that wasn't. He didn't bring it up unless I did. We went for walks, played video games, drank beer on the fire escape like we were 21 again. Other friends dropped off food, checked in by text. No pressure, just presence. And I needed that. People not trying to fix me, just sitting beside the mess. I didn't go looking for someone new. That wasn't on my mind at all. But about 6 weeks later, I bumped into someone I hadn't seen since college. Her name was Lena. We'd had a couple of classes together, shared a few group projects back in the day. Nothing romantic. I saw her in line at a coffee shop and almost didn't say anything. But she saw me first and smiled. Asked how I'd been. We talked for 20 minutes that day. Then again the next week. Then lunch. Then dinner. There was no agenda. No pressure. Just two people talking about books, weird childhood stories, and what we thought we'd be doing by now. She didn't ask about Kara, and I didn't offer much. She just let me be who I was in that moment. Raw, a little broken, but honest. That was the difference. With Lena, I didn't feel like I was performing. There was no pretense, no hidden motives, no part of myself I had to shrink to fit inside her version of love. It was simple. And after everything, simple felt sacred. We're still figuring it out. We take things slow. She knows I've been through something heavy, and she respects the time it takes to move forward without dragging the past behind you. Some nights I still lie in bed and think about how fast everything changed. How one phone call ripped through the life I thought I was building. But most nights now, I sleep. And when I wake up, I don't feel dread. I feel space. I feel possibility. I don't know what comes next. but I know I'm walking toward it on my own terms. And that's more than enough for now. It's been almost a year since the wedding that never happened. A year since the call that cracked open everything I thought I knew about my relationship, my future, myself. It's strange how something can feel so distant and so recent at the same time. Sometimes, I still wake up and catch myself expecting to hear her voice in the kitchen, humming over the sound of boiling water. Then I remember. And instead of pain, there's just stillness. Not numbness. Just quiet. Like a house after a storm. I haven't spoken to Kara since the day I told her to leave. She tried a few more times, messages from burner numbers, emails with vague subject lines, even a letter that showed up in my mailbox months later. I never read it. I didn't need to. There was nothing she could say that would undo what she'd done, or the way she'd done it. What broke me wasn't just the cheating, it was the intentional hiding, the exploitation, the performance of a relationship she'd already abandoned for profit. And I wasn't going to be a prop in her narrative anymore. Looking back, I don't feel like I missed out on anything. I don't feel like a victim. What I feel is clearer, wiser. I trusted someone who was good at wearing love like a costume, and when that mask fell off, I had a choice: stay hurt or rebuild. I chose the second one, not out of pride, out of necessity. Life now is quieter, but fuller in its own way. Lena and I still see each other. We take long walks without filling every silence. We cook together. Sometimes we say nothing at all, and it still feels like the most honest connection I've ever had. We don't talk about the past much, and that's okay. Some things don't need to be unpacked in every conversation. Some things just live in you, like a scar, not visible all the time, but always there to remind you that healing happened. I don't follow Kara on social media. I don't know what she's doing. I assume she's still creating content in the way she was. Maybe she's still making money off it. Maybe not. But whatever she's doing, I've stopped carrying the weight of it. I kept the apartment, changed everything about it, and made it mine. I painted the walls. Donated the old couch. Got a dog. A quiet mutt named Milo who watches me like I'm the most important thing in the room. He doesn't ask for much, just a walk, a bowl of food, a place to sleep close by. There's something about that kind of loyalty that feels healing in ways I can't even explain. Every once in a while, someone will ask if I ever think about trying again, marriage, commitment, the whole thing. And I do. But not in the way I used to. I don't look for the high anymore. I look for honesty, consistency, soft places to land. I used to think love was built on grand gestures and chemistry. Now I know it's in the quiet things. The small ways people show up when they don't have to. If you've made it this far into my story, thank you. Really. I wrote this not just to process, but for the person out there who's in that strange, numb place. That place where you're starting to know, but you're scared to say it out loud. Trust yourself. You don't need concrete proof to listen to your gut. And you don't owe anyone your silence when the truth is burning in your chest. Sometimes walking away isn't failure. Sometimes, it's the bravest thing you'll ever do. And sometimes, what feels like an ending is just you finding your way back to yourself.